So this is the last lecture video on the reproductive system. In this case, we talk about, we had three previous videos before, okay, about the reproductive system. Please make sure that you watch all those videos, especially the video about meiosis, before you actually proceed in watching this video. So in this lecture video, we're going to be talking primarily about oogenesis, which is the creation of, like in this case, eggs, like ova, and spermatogenesis and spermiogenesis, which is the creation of mature sperm in this case. Interestingly, I'm going to tell you guys some very, very important facts about eggs and females, obviously. You are, like during the fetal period, you probably are actually born with around 7 million eggs, okay? And what happens is the amount of eggs that you actually are born with is fixed. You don't create any more new ones. Okay, so that's so that again is actually indicated by this as well. What happens is like out of the 6 to 7 million eggs that you actually have, you're probably born with 1 million eggs. Okay, because what happens is eggs actually get destroyed or degraded as time goes on. That process in which viable eggs are actually destroyed, or in this case removed from circulation, is actually called atresia. Okay, so by the time you hit puberty, you actually probably only have, so you were born with 1 million eggs. By the time you hit puberty, you're probably only born with, in this case, 300,000 eggs in this case. Or actually not born, but you actually are left with 300,000 eggs during puberty. And what happens is out of those 300,000 eggs, only around 300 to 400 eggs are only the ones that are actually ovulated. So just think about that, right? So you had 7 million eggs, then you were born, you have 1 million eggs, right? Then at puberty, you only have 300,000 eggs, and out of all of those 7 million eggs that you had when you first started development as a fetus, you only use between 300 to 400 of those eggs. So quite interesting. All right, so the process, all right, so this is oogenesis, the creation of eggs. Interestingly, in meiosis, okay, so oogenesis is a form of meiosis, just like spermatogenesis is a form of meiosis. When we talk about meiosis, we're talking about the creation of eggs and sperm. Interestingly speaking, if you think about meiosis previously, there was a theoretical yield of 4 sperm or 4 eggs. However, in terms of oogenesis, you actually only get one egg at the end. Okay, so and we're going to talk about the process in a little bit more detail now. Okay, so embryonic and fetal period, what happens is they actually undergo mitosis. So you start with 1, and you create 7 million eggs. Okay, 7 million eggs. So now you're at 7 million at this point. Okay. Then during childhood, you're born with 1 million eggs. And out of those 1 million eggs, every year, every month, some of these eggs actually get destroyed. Okay, so that's actually called atresia. All right. And then you actually reach puberty. Now at puberty, you actually have 300,000 eggs. Okay, hypothetically speaking. Out of those 300,000 eggs, every month, okay, every month, there's a race. And there's actually, it says right here, out of the thing you actually have, in this case, there's actually a competition, okay, into who's going to become a mature follicle in this case. So you actually start with basically 20 primary follicles. And again, the difference between a follicle and an egg is a follicle is a structure that has an egg on the inside. And again, the purpose of a follicle is to protect the egg from your own white blood cells because it only has 23 chromosomes. Out of those 20, all right, out of those 20 primary follicles, what happens is, let's just say, okay, we'll go with round with, like, let's say out of those 20, you only end up, let's say, with 8. And of those 8, there's another competition that occurs, and what happens is there's only one that becomes a mature follicle. So, right, so you can see there's a lot of waste involved here. Okay, so atresia, so all of those follicles that make it from 7 million all the way to 300,000 all the way to this point, all of those ones that actually get degraded or get destroyed, those are actually undertaking atresia. Okay, atresia again is, in this case, destruction of your own egg cells in this case. All right. So very, very important. During primary oocyte, okay, what happens is you still have, if you want to think about it, you still have 46 chromosomes. The start of the haploid phase, so 46 chromosomes more, you're diploid. Again, this is from the meiosis slide. Okay, diploid. That's a terrible penmanship. Okay, but what happens is once you become a secondary oocyte, okay, and the secondary oocyte, folks, and the primary oocyte is actually inside the follicle. Okay, once you become a secondary oocyte, that's actually when you become haploid. All right, and the reason why that is why? Well, because you have just went through meiosis 1. All right, so meiosis 1, okay, prophase 1, arrested. If you keep going, you go undertake, once you complete meiosis 1, you're basically haploid. So diploid again is 46, haploid means 23. And something interesting happens when you become in this case, a secondary oocyte, which is again from the mature follicle, right? So obviously it splits up into 2 cells. Only one of them gets saved and the other one actually gets degraded. That's actually called the first polar body. And the secondary oocyte is arrested in metaphase 2. And again, if you remember in metaphase 2, you actually have, okay, 23 of this lineup. Okay, which is different than mitosis, in which, because in metaphase, in mitosis, you actually have 46. Okay, 46. Okay, all of that stuff, and actually not 46. I'm sorry, but 92. But in this case, you actually only have 23. All right. When you ovulate, which is the expulsion of the egg from the follicle, what happens is meiosis 2 is completed. But guess what? All right, you're still in metaphase. You're still in metaphase. So what that means to say is you're still in metaphase, which means to say that your chromosomes are still lined up in the middle. So the only time that you complete meiosis 2, which means, right, is if you are actually fertilized. So if no fertilization occurs, this egg actually becomes degraded, and this does not. So this individual chromatids actually do not undertake anaphase. Okay? If a fertilization occurs, what happens is, obviously, you're going to create, again, anaphase occurs. You're going to have 2 nuclei. One of those nuclei gets degraded. That's called the second polar body. Okay? And obviously, once that is degraded, one of them is now a viable nuclei, and that's actually where the actual sperm, the union of the sperm nuclei and the egg nuclei actually occur. All right. So the reason why, again, why in this case, theoretically, you're supposed to have 4 eggs, but you only get 2 is during each division of meiosis. After meiosis 1, one of the actual byproducts, actually, one of the actual products is actually degraded. And after meiosis 2, that another one of those polar bodies. Now, the reason why they're called polar body as opposed to an ovum is the polar bodies do not have a lot of cytoplasmic material, whereas the ovum actually have the majority of the cytoplasmic material. Cytoplasmic material we're talking about, in this case, mitochondria, obviously ribosomes, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Okay, so again, interesting thing, oogenesis, you start with 1 oogonia, you end with 1 ovum. And the reason why is even though you undertake 2 processes of meiosis, in both steps of meiosis, after meiosis 1, one of those polar bodies get destroyed, and after meiosis 2, another polar body gets destroyed. Very, very important characteristic. Okay. Now, for males, it's the same, all right? So you actually, again, have primary spermatocyte. Now, for males, it's different than females. In females, obviously, you have a fixed number of eggs when you're born. In males, we can keep producing. Actually, it takes like around 75 days to actually make new sperm, and then it takes 10 to 14 days for actual new sperm to actually make it to the seminal vesicles, okay? So, or the epididymis, I'm sorry. So that's one of the interesting things. So after 75 days, we can create more sperm actually, all right? So same thing, you actually have mitotic divisions to create millions and millions of spermatocytes. You undertake meiosis 1, now you are now a secondary spermatocyte. So before meiosis 1, you call a primary spermatocyte, and I hope that this is actually makes sense. Before meiosis 1 in oogenesis, you're also called primary oocyte. So primary spermatocyte before meiosis 1, secondary spermatocyte after meiosis 1, secondary oocyte after meiosis 1. Okay, I'm going the wrong way here. Sorry. So once you're called secondary, whether you're called secondary spermatocyte or secondary oocyte, you're diploid at this point. You start with 46, you can see you have 46 chromosomes, now you have 23 chromosomes. Okay? And then at the end, the secondary spermatocytes become, in this case, spermatids. Okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, spermatids are not sperm yet. So this is the reason why there's actually another process called spermiogenesis. Okay, so this is spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis ends with 4 spermatids. Now, these spermatids, as you can see, they don't have a flagella, a tail. They don't have an acrosomal head, so they don't have all the structures typical of a sperm. So they have to undertake another set of development, and that set of development after spermatogenesis. So again, this to here, okay, is spermatogenesis. This process in which they get tails, they get the acrosomal head, they become viable, they become swimmers, that's called spermiogenesis. So again, spermatogenesis from here to here, spermiogenesis from here to here. And as you guys can see, the primary reason why this is obviously if you don't have flagella, which is the tail, you cannot swim. So you need to have that structure that makes you capable of swimming. Okay. The other thing is you actually also need your acrosome cup. You actually need enzymes as well. And the reason why you need enzymes is this is actually the enzyme that actually then penetrates the wall of the ova. In order for you to fertilize an egg, you need to have enzymes that actually degrade the wall of the ova. Okay? You cannot just like use kinetic energy to like go at 500 miles per hour and ram yourself against an egg. Okay, that doesn't work that way. You actually have to like interact with an egg, secrete some enzymes, create a hole in the ova, and then penetrate the ova. That's the only way that you can actually fertilize an egg. All right, so very important thing again, remember primary spermatocyte, primary oocyte is before meiosis 1, secondary spermatocyte, secondary oocyte is after meiosis, okay, 1, okay, in this case, right? Again, very important thing, diploid 46, haploid 23 when you're called secondary. In spermatogenesis, you get 4 spermatids. In oogenesis, you only get 1. Okay, ova in this case. Right? And again, there's a secondary process in which the spermatids become sperm, and that's called spermiogenesis. Okay? Now, why is it that, I hope that this is making sense, why does sperm and eggs only have 23 chromosomes? Well, the reason why is you want the new human being, the new child, the fetus in this case, to actually have 46 chromosomes. If meiosis, which is spermatogenesis and oogenesis, does not occur, what happens is the child will have 92 chromosomes. And FYI, all organisms have what we call a definite chromosomal numbers. All right, so humans have 46, elephants have however many, okay, worms have however many, okay, and FYI, the number of chromosomes is not indicative of your in this case your place in the food chain or in the place of development, okay, because a lot of worm actually has more chromosomes than us, and bananas have tons and tons and tons of chromosomes as opposed to us, okay, and obviously bananas, you don't compare yourself to a banana, I hope. All right, but this is the purpose. Again, the purpose is so that you get 46 chromosomes at the end once you have a viable fetus. Okay, so that is basically it. I hope that, again, if you happen to have any questions, I have virtual office hours. Please zap me an email if you happen to have any questions about this. But make sure that you hone down the process of meiosis, specifically spermatogenesis and oogenesis.